Welcome to the Freedom Lovin' Podcast. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 3. And today I have a guest on the show coming up in just a minute here. His name is Jeremy Frandsen, and he's a good friend of mine. He runs he's a co-host of the Internet Business Mastery podcast, along with Jason Van Orden. And we're going to talk a little bit about intrinsic motivation, among a whole bunch of other things totally related to the topic of freedom. So it was an awesome conversation, and I'm sure that people are going to really get a lot out of this. Otherwise, just have a couple things. Next week, I'm going to the Bitcoin conference in San Jose, and I mentioned this on the last podcast. So heading up there on Thursday. So right around the time this podcast comes out, I'll be heading probably up to San Jose, up to the Bay Area, and get to see what's going on in the world of Bitcoin. And I'm also going to be hanging out with some of the people from the Free Talk Live podcast / show, and that'll be really fun. I used to listen to those guys all the time, and it's it's a pretty cool show. They talk a lot about stuff that you don't hear on typical talk radio shows. So, and then actually in about 3 weeks from now, I'm going to be heading up to Boulder, Colorado. I'm going to spend 2 months up there and kind of living free and hiking and stuff like that. So looking forward to actually just hitting the road. I love road trips, and I'm going to make a couple stops along the way. So it should be a really good time. And I also just got in the mail a few days ago a new credit card. So I've been trying to find the cards with the best mileage plans for airline miles. And this one is probably one of the top, I'd say 10 in terms of credit cards, in terms of what you get. I think I have one of the best ones already, and it's the Chase Business MasterCard. It's called the Chase Inc., and that one gives you some really great benefits. Like if you spend $5,000 in your first 3 months, you get 40,000 miles, or 40,000 points, which you can apply towards airline miles, which is what I plan on doing. And then this card that I just got, it's called the United Mileage Plus Explorer. And the cool thing about this is that you only have to spend $1,000 in 3 months, and you get 30,000 miles. So I can easily spend $1,000 in 3 months. So I'm looking forward to racking up all these miles and finding new credit cards. I think right now what I'm trying to figure out is when to actually cancel credit cards, because you don't want to cancel credit cards typically because it hurts your credit score. But when you start getting a lot of credit cards like what I have right now, I'm starting to pile them up. The first year is typically free on most of these, but then they start charging you. Like this new credit card I got is $95 a year after the first one, so I can handle that. But if I've got like 5 or 6 credit cards and I'm paying, like $600, $700, $800 a year, it starts to become like, okay, is this worth it? How many miles am I getting? What am I getting for my money here? But anyway, that's a topic for another show for sure. Without further ado, here is my interview with Jeremy Frandsen. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and keep going out there and building freedom. Well, today I'm really excited to have my good friend and also the founder of the Internet Business Mastery podcast, and his name is Jeremy Frandsen. Hey, Jeremy, How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
I keep thinking Sterling, and I'm like, I got to keep changing it.
Yeah, we just go by our full name now.
Yeah. So are you, did you do that to kind of separate, like, different parts of your business or parts of your life, or when you had Sterling? Or?
Well, when we started our show, it was all about, we did not want to hold back. But at the time, I had a very thriving eBay business. And not only thriving, but massive competitors. And I wanted to talk about the stuff I was doing on eBay without them being able to search, find me, and hear what I was doing.
Right.
So it was literally just that kind of thing to go, okay, we'll use a pseudonym or an alias so that I can't be searchable and they can't counter, the tactics I was using to just crush it there. And that's it. That literally was it. And we actually changed back to our names, I don't know, let's just say a year ago, because, we're being offered with book deals and different things like this, and we wanted to be our names. And I'm way past that. We don't do the same type of business. Now our entire focus is on the podcast and the courses and stuff we have.
Yeah.
So there's no need to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and everything right now in the internet and in internet businesses, with some exceptions, but in our world, is all about transparency.
Right.
So having a pseudonym, you know, there's a lot of like, oh, are you hiding something?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I was hiding tactics from competitors. That's all it was.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of the behind the scenes of why we had aliases.
Okay. Yeah. So you're not hiding from like the CIA and stuff like that.
Oh no, I'm sure they've recorded everything because of all this free.
That's already too late.
They were like, they tied me into any aliases long ago.
Yeah. Cool. So, okay, so how and why, this is a completely wildly open-ended question, but how and why did you get to where you are today?
Well, back when I was born, no, I would start with the fact that, and I think everybody has this, but I had a very wild sense of autonomy needs from a very young age. And, you know, autonomy is really just the capacity of a rational individual to make an informed, uncoerced decision. And that was very high for me, even from a really young age. I basically wanted to be a free adult since I was like 12. That's when I remember going, man, this being a kid thing sucks in some ways.
Wow.
And at about 14, religion got axed to my family's dismay. And again, I just wanted to go out in the world and go be an adult, which really just meant the freedom to do what I wanted.
Sure.
So I remember, you know, being very aware of that from a young age. And it came off as rebellious, but not in the typical way. Like, I needed more control than drugs or alcohol or any of that. I couldn't do those because I wanted to be in control, not you know, fade out or anything. So mine just went more into the direction of educating myself and expressing myself and, you know, trying to figure out who the heck I was instead of just being a compilation of what people told me I'm supposed to be. So, but that was just, for me, something that occurred really young, whereas, you know, my brothers and sisters, they're all still very much in the matrix in every way. So for whatever reason, it was a part of me that I couldn't hold back, or at least the indoctrination camps didn't root out of me.
Yeah. You mean the indoctrination camps being the government's
public school?
Public schools. It's funny you were saying about how you kind of rebelled in a different way, and I was kind of the same way in that I was just listening to somebody talking about, you know, the goth people, like in high school. We had these, they were like black hair and white, you know, everything, and you know, they were like the rebels, right? They're like all these rebels, and then they get together and they go to these clubs, and there's like goth clubs. And then it's like, how do they stand out? They all kind of look the same, dress the same.
Oh, for sure.
Same music. So then it's like, you have to rebel among that group. And then it's like, well, how do you do that? And
you're like, well, I have to have double black around my eyes.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, but that's one thing that I've kind of struggled with, is that, you know, like I kind of naturally was just like going against whatever the mainstream was, and I didn't want to go into the stoner group. Like, that didn't appeal to me at all, or any group. And then later in life that turned into like, okay, so then I got a job and I'm like, I don't want to have a boss. I can't stand having a boss, so I rebel against that. And then I had like my own business. Then I start rebelling against myself, like where I'm literally going,
I do that still. That's funny.
And so today I'm still struggling with that. Like I join entrepreneur groups and I go, I don't want to be anything like these people. Even if they're totally successful, making like tons of money, I'm like, I got to be different. You know, it's
it's hard. It's part of that understanding yourself. I mean, I'm literally in that same place, or on the outs of discovering that about myself, because I didn't realize that I was even rebelling against success sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm like, once you start having a certain type of friends, I had friends that were crazy successful.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took me years to develop that circle of friends, but then, you know, they would give me amazing advice. Do this, this, and this. And I would go, oh yeah, I will rebel. Right, exactly. You know, like, that's my nature. Yeah. You say what to do, and I'm going to say, well, no, I got to do something different. But it's just being able to be aware of that and being able to choose, because if it becomes an unconscious thing, then you've lost choice again. And freedom's very much about choice. Yeah. So that's why recently, I've been really looking at where I rebel for the sake of rebellion rather than what will serve me and the world better.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we're both big fans of the Harry Brown book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, and that's actually kind of how I started this podcast. It was based on some of those concepts. And there's all those traps. The beginning, like the first part of the book, he talks about all these ways that you kind of trap yourself, and the identity trap, and the intellectual and emotional trap, and the unselfishness trap, the government trap, and there's a huge list of them, and you have a resource for that too, I think, right?
Yeah, so one of the resources that has a lot of the traps mapped out and kind of the Cliff Note version, and that's at ultimatefreedomquest.com/toolbox. I haven't seen it done like this, so if you kind of go to the Harry Brown section, it has all these traps listed out and just kind of quotes the specifics without all the stories and stuff he says in the book. But so how did you get around? Maybe you have one or two that are like kind of your biggest ones that you felt trapped. Like, how did you kind of get around that? Oh man, it takes a lot of work getting to know who you are, and really that's what this is, being able to know who you are and then express who you are. It's a tough thing because my nature is more just action. Ambition and action. So to take a moment to think about myself, maybe in the woods with butterflies, like that just wasn't it felt like there was some of that I was going to have to do, but I wanted it so bad that I went through it. And I can say that it's been about 6 months since I really went through all of the traps. And when I first did it, I actually went through it pretty extensively. I went through each chapter of the book and then really thought about it. And as a matter of fact, you gave me the book originally.
Yeah, that's right.
That I think of it. Did I give you back?
You might still have it.
I'll have to send that back to you.
Well, actually, I'll be swinging through Salt Lake in about a month, or actually less than 3 weeks.
Okay, so I'll have to give it back to you.
Yeah, so I'll pick it up.
So thanks, you helped me go through it. This is awesome.
That's right.
But, so I did an initial thing that took actually years because, of course, we got our lives and other things. But one I went through recently because you mentioned it, that we were going to talk about it here, and I saw that, wow, man, one of the first ones I still wrestle with. But the awareness helps. So the one that I still realized I wrestled with was the identity trap. And he says that there are two identity traps. Number one, the belief that you should be something other than yourself. And number two, the assumptions that others do things the way you would. Right. And man, I still wrestle with that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got a very specific way I do everything. I'm very conscious now in life about how I do things. So, I mean, even as much as the way I drive.
Yeah.
I'm like, I try and be very considerate. I try and look where everybody is, not be dangerous. And then somebody will nearly run me off the road. And it's shocking. I'm like, what?
Right.
Like, you're not supposed to do that. I do it this way. You know what I mean? Like, so those are things to wrestle with. And even just to think you should be someone other than yourself. I mean, that comes even more it comes in business, but relationships. I'm in a new relationship right now. And it's always a matter of wrestling between being yourself and being who you think they might want you to be.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So getting over those, I mean, these are major, major things. Like, your life rocks and changes when you take the time to do this, which is why I had to go, okay, stop thinking that, I'm going to be looking into a mirror, chanting to myself with butterflies in the woods or whatever airy-fairy things that people sometimes relate to taking time to figure out yourself, and go, oh my gosh, this will completely change my life.
Yeah.
And it did very, very much.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that every one of these books and seminars and things that I go to that are about self-improvement or self-help, they always talk about the should. Like, if you're living with shoulds, that's screwing you up.
Yeah, don't should all over yourself.
Yeah, everybody says that. I think Tony Robbins maybe said it first, and then everyone copies it.
Yeah.
But, that's huge. I mean, and I do that all the time, too. It's like, I should be at this point. And I go to an internet marketing meetup, and I'm like, wow, that person's way ahead of me. I should be where they are. Why am I not? And then it's like go down this path, and it doesn't help because then you're just kicking yourself, and it's
Well, and it's interesting because in business, one of the things that I've dealt with recently, we've been in business long enough that we now have students that are wildly successful.
Yeah.
And some that even are more successful than us.
Right.
And you want to talk about shooting all over yourself. We're like, oh, man, they took some of the stuff we said and took them to 100%, but we had different focus.
Yeah.
Like everybody's so different and their approach is different. And I know there's other shows on freedom, but it's like it depends on your approach, where you go and what your focus is. Like my focus isn't money.
Right.
So when we look at his amounts of money that he makes every month, and then I have a business partner, so we split our money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so if I looked at just that, I would be like all over myself going, oh, you should do this and you should do this. And, like with the Harry Brown stuff and some of the other traps and being able to go, okay, I need to not look at those things. Like judging those things are only hurting me. They're not helping.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was partly why this stuff was very, very useful, to be able to look past that. And again, filter things through what are going to more enrich my life.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah, and like you said, it's like their priority may be that they want to have kids, and that's their priority, and they may make a ton of money, and they can take their family on vacations and take time off and all this stuff, whereas like someone like me, that's not my priority, so I'm going, well, I should have that, but then it's like, but I don't have the reason that they have. I don't have the same reason.
Yep.
I can get by with a lot less in terms of just actual money and be just as happy, or even, just fulfilling my own goals and wants and needs and all that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about your favorite topic, intrinsic motivation and the self-motivating purpose. I actually listened to your podcast you did with Brett from School Sucks podcast. Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was what you had to say there. It was awesome. So what is intrinsic motivation, and how can we cultivate it, and why don't we already have it?
First of all, it's worked out of us. I mean, through a lot of different filters in society, having people that are motivated based on their own personal interests isn't good. I guess let me define it. Intrinsic motivation is doing something because you have a personal interest in learning and an enjoyment of the subject itself without external pressure or coercion. Now, I added that little last part.
Yeah.
Because really, that's the thing. It's like, you may think, oh, I really love this, but really your parents really shoved you into it.
Right.
And on the side, you actually loved this other thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard. You've got to go back and dig for that. But yeah, I mean, the intrinsic motivation is really constantly going to the core of who you are and saying, look, if there were no outside factors, would I enjoy doing this?
Yeah.
Take away, if you do a certain job and you're like, oh yeah, I'm a lawyer, and, I was basically just groomed to be a lawyer, and now I make a certain amount of money, and I've got a certain amount of bills, and I got family, and blah, 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 all these external forces, but really, you would rather be teaching scuba diving in Fiji or whatever, Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Most of the time, I think our mind just helps defend us against what could end up being, the Harry Brown's despair trap, these different feelings of despair that, oh my gosh, I'm not living my thing, that it makes us not think of it at all, or think we don't have intrinsic motivation or a single motivating purpose. You know what I mean? So, and it's all a defense because we're in these weird positions.
Yeah.
That's intrinsic motivation. It's very much about you'd be learning because of an enjoyment of the subject itself.
Right.
I mean, that's an interesting thing, because we're not taught that. We're taught, okay, you got to learn these subjects. Yeah. And if you're really smart and you want to make a lot of money, you got to be a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever.
Right.
Go be a judge. You know what I mean? If you want to control people, you be a senator. Do you know what I mean? You figure out these things that are less about what your, internal interest and enjoyment is.
So do you think that if someone is forced to do something, or forced to be, kind of groomed into some kind of career, it has the opposite effect. So you're forced to do something and you're automatically against that, because it's taking away your freedom, basically. And even if it's something that you could possibly be interested in, it may change because you're forced into it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the really deep need for expression and autonomy are definitely not met with that.
Right.
I didn't have parents and stuff that were pushing me particularly, but there definitely are societal pressures. Like telling somebody you're an internet business owner,
Yeah.
literally means nothing. They have no idea what to say by that.
Right.
And just for my own amusement, we started calling ourselves cubicle escape artists.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we're like, people don't understand what we're saying anyway when we
Right.
explain who we are. We might as well enjoy it.
Exactly.
But, and there's something to that, because the business that I did before this, most people see as exciting. Mm-hmm. When I was doing what I thought I could do to express myself, not realizing what it really was, the industry. But, once I started really getting at the core of what I wanted to do, that industry wasn't it.
Was that the Hollywood stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, the film business.
Yeah.
Literally, I just wanted to express my beliefs and what I had to offer the world, and I thought the only way I could do it is film.
Sure.
And storytelling in that way. Whereas, thankfully, the way the world works now, we're on your podcast. You're not classically trained in you know what I mean? Like, we're just normal guys that we now have basically the ability to create a media empire in our a spare bedroom.
Yeah.
Which could get me off in another whole tangent I think we'll probably talk about later. But anyway, like, having that really triggered something in me to go, oh, I don't need to follow all these. Because believe me, as much as Hollywood seems like it could be exciting to some people and there's a lot of glamour and whatever, it's not.
Yeah.
All of that is created.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to express yourself. They want you to express what they think the culture is currently looking for.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So if Snow White seems to be in everybody's head, there's 5 movies about Snow White. If you want to create a certain kind of movie and it's politically different than the people that are giving you the money, you're never going to make that movie.
Yeah.
So expression is actually the opposite of expressed, really.
Yeah.
However you could say it. But so anyway, yeah, it took me a lot of years to figure that out, which led me to leaving and going to where I am now. But yeah, I mean, even in my own mind, so I didn't have the external pressure from parents, but I had a kind of societal pressure or just an unknowing that I thought, well, that might be the only way I can do it, through art.
Right. So then how did you actually cultivate this? I mean, just kind of breaking free of the kind of the societal pressures and actually getting to where you can express yourself on a podcast and actually make a living doing that. And
it was still really that that deep desire to bring something to the world.
Yeah.
And you talked about, one of the things we're really into right now is helping people develop their single motivating purpose. And that's really been the thing that has been behind the scenes the whole time, but finally we're really cultivating now. Not only for ourselves, but just for everyone we teach. So it's called Internet Business Mastery, and we do teach internet business. But really the core of it is, figuring out what that thing is for yourself. Yeah. And so, for example, I was just going to kind of explain single motivating purpose a little bit and unique ability. And, the single motivating purpose is really the essence of what you love to do and what you do best. So it's both.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, we're actually developing an entire course on this right now, but the closest thing that we found, and we actually did ourselves, both my partner and I, his name's Jason Van Orden, is a thing called the unique ability, and it's a book. And so I was just going to describe some of the stuff that they say that really is the essence of your single motivating purpose as well as unique ability. And that is that it's the essence of what you love to do and do best, as I said before. Now, the 4 characteristics are, it's a superior ability that other people notice and value. Right. You are passionate about using it, and you want to use it as much as possible. It's energizing both for you and others around you. And there's a sense of never-ending improvement. You keep getting better and better, and you never run out of the possibility of growth. Now, because it's fueled by tremendous passion, it can be a very powerful force in the world and create enormous value for others. When you combine talent and passion, you have a recipe for never-ending improvement, energy, excitement, and higher levels of achievement. So, I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
That becomes more than, the butterflies and birds landing on your fingers and all that stuff. That becomes the core of what you do every day.
Yeah.
The other aspects of it were, it's something that you live. it's not a destination. It's something that motivates you. It's basically your life's work, your legacy. I mean, all stuff that I didn't think of that way. Yeah, when we came upon it, it was like it changed everything. Like, this was no longer a business about teaching business. It was a mission, a life's work, and that changes everything. That changes, like, honestly, how to create a blog, how to get traffic. Do you know what I mean? All that stuff never was my passion. That's just a tool I use now to get the word out.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And I have more of a desire to do those things. Like, I want to get the word out.
Yeah.
Though the stuff that I really don't enjoy, we just try and hire somebody to do that. But anyway, I was just going to say also really quickly that there's a quick question to start getting your single motivating purpose in your mind. And it's, I wake up in the morning to blank in order to blank. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you my single motivating purpose, and then I'll put it in that question. Sure. Mine is that I inspire purpose-driven action that leads to freedom, fulfillment, and happiness. Mm-hmm. So if I put that in the question, it's, I wake up in the morning to inspire purpose-driven action in order to help others create freedom, fulfillment, and happiness.
Nice. Yeah, I like it.
And I'll tell you, once I got really clear on that, it makes decisions unbelievably easy.
Yeah.
You filter it through that on everything. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, even when you said, hey, do you want to do this show? I'm going, okay, well, is this going to possibly lead me to be able to inspire purpose-driven action? Yeah. Yes. Uh-huh. Boom, done. The answer is yes. I don't have to think any more of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And because it does that, then the amount of time and effort I put into prep and all that kind of stuff, I'm just excited to do it. It's not a task.
And it kinda, exactly. And it kind of takes the stress out of your decisions, because that's what that's what causes stress. Is you're constantly having to make decisions on which direction to go. Especially as an entrepreneur, every moment of your day is pretty much like, okay, do I go this direction or this direction? But if you have that single motivating purpose, you just filter it through, and it's like an automated thing where you're not having to think about it. You're just like, no, of course, that's the direction I'm going.
Yeah, even me saying out loud the process of me filtering it through, like, obviously I don't even think that anymore. It just filters automatically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
cool. Awesome.
So that's been the key.
yeah, that's awesome. So in terms of freedom, we love talking about freedom. So I divide it into different categories, and I think we've talked about this before offline, and there's all sorts of different ways to think of freedom. Like you could be, we're relatively free in the U.S. compared to other countries, but then you look at all the things all the ways that we're not free, like try not paying your taxes, try, speeding, going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit and things like that, and find out how not free you are. But then there's all these other categories in your life. So if you just focus on the one thing, you could feel like, oh my God, I'm completely not free and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
But I divided it into several categories. So there's personal freedom, there's relationships, and then there's the philosophical or maybe even political, and then there's the financial freedom. What does that mean to you? Like, what in each of these categories, what does freedom mean to you?
Yeah, I guess kind of the way I form the definition is, basically the ability to choose, like what you do with your time and your body, and as well as the results from those actions.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if that's financial gain or whatever. So for instance, my desire to express myself, that's one thing. Luckily, not yet is there a hindrance to that, though the people that like to hinder those things are definitely trying. It's my nice way of saying it. But I can express myself right now with no restriction.
Yeah.
Now that's express myself. To some degree, I can't take the actions that back that. Like, I express myself and we do incredibly well financially from doing that.
Yeah.
Right, through our business. But, that's where they come in and take a portion of it. So then I'm only a percentage free.
Yeah.
So let's just completely lowball it and say they take 40%.
Right.
Then I get to express myself fully, but the ability to benefit from that expression is hindered by 40%.
Yeah.
But thankfully, as far as expressing myself, as far as I can see, I have very little hindrance there. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I try and focus on that more, because when I focused on the amount of stuff that was restricted, I fell into this despair trap that Harry Brown talks about, which means I wasn't expressing myself, I wasn't being able to create that value for myself and others.
Right.
But I mean, as far as any of the other things, personally, obviously let's see what I could call it. The happiness that comes from being who you truly are. I mean, you can do that too.
Yeah.
Now, again, depending on who you are, if who you are, like for you, is travel, there's going to be some hindrances there.
Yeah.
As much as I try to be an incredibly positive person, when I go through customs, as much as I smile, it makes no difference to me. There's an irritation there.
Sure, yeah.
And I just look at that. And it's funny because I've found that the more I smile and try and go, okay, this is just something I have to get through to get what I want. So this is part of the process.
Yep.
And it is what is. As whatever weird it is to say that is what is there. That's the step in front of me. When I started an internet business, strangely enough, people just didn't magically bring me checks or bags of money.
Yeah.
Like there were steps I had to take that weren't enjoyable, some of them.
Yeah, that's true. And it's unfortunate that we have to deal with like the security theater, like at the airport with the TSA and all the nonsense. But I do find that I'm kind of like you. No matter how I do it, I'm going to be irritated to some degree as I walk through this and get molested or whatever happens. But if I do it and I try to smile and I just keep thinking, okay, this is, like you said, like it's just this a step through, then it does make it a lot better than if I'm angry and thinking, oh, these idiots, they're probably, they probably didn't even graduate high school, and what are they doing, and why should they have power over me? And if I start thinking all those thoughts, then I just become angry. And then I'm angry as I'm getting on the plane, and it's like, what did that do? Okay, it's all the same. I didn't change anything. I didn't, like, the TSA is still there, and so.
Yeah. And the guy that, patted you down, frisked you, or whatever, he's literally just doing that again to someone else. He couldn't care less that you're mad. In fact, I always saw it as they're winning even more if 1 second after I'm done with the molestation, being molested, if I'm thinking it 1 second later, they're still molesting me.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they're molesting my mind, which I've just got too many things to think about to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of it, freedom, financial freedom, all of it comes down to my choice. But I think you also, in order to have your own choice, you have to mentally and emotionally be able to be fully aware of what you think and who you are, so that you can actually still make a choice. There's plenty of restrictions out there above and beyond yourself, but even if they were all gone, that would still be there. So I'm working on the things that I actually have the ability to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can change my mind. I can change my mindset. I can think. You know what I mean? Like reading the Harry Brown stuff was incredibly helpful for me, as well as lots of other things. I know you had Wes Bertrand on, and I mean, I listen to some of his stuff and we talk all the time, and I get a lot of value of, being able to sift through my own boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's like what you're saying is it's that clarity and then ability to choose that really creates freedom in all these different areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's another one that you could probably talk for several days on, but
I'd be very trying to get right to it.
Just boil it down. So how, just in terms of internet business, how does that create freedom in your life?
Well, the two major things that it creates for me is freedom of expression and financial freedom. Mm-hmm. Now, the ability, man, there's lots of ways I could go with this. I'll give kind of an overview. The fact that there are, let's just say, I'm just going to give general numbers here, but I think it'll help people get the idea. Let's say there's 7 billion people on the planet, and 2 billion of those people can somehow access the internet. Now, of the people that are on the internet, now we're down to that 2 billion, there's going to be a group, a certain number, and I don't know what that number is. It's going to be different for every business, but there's going to be a certain group of people that will hear what you have to say and like it. They're going to like you, no matter what. You don't have to change anything. Like if you listen to somebody and they're like really gregarious and they're super funny and they've really developed humor, but that's not, you're more of a person that is like, well, I'm more of a step-by-step person.
Right.
I was an engineer. Like my business partner, Jason, was an engineer. He is an amazing professor. He can tell you he always remembers, okay, here's the 8 steps to do this. Right. And I'm more of a general person. Like I'm more of an like I have the passion. Yeah. Now he does too. We both have little elements of both of these things, but we all have different things that are basically our single motivating purpose. Like we've got that in how we express as well. But that small group of people, no matter who you are, is going to tie into and love you. Like they're really going to connect with who you are.
Right.
To the point that they're actually willing to exchange value with you. You give them value, whether it's a course or whatever, a service.
Yeah.
And they're going to be willing to give you, and I'll go political here, fiat currency, whatever. They're going to give you value back.
Right.
And we've seen it in every category. Like it's insane.
Yeah. The
type of people. Even one of our latest basically success stories is a woman that does a site called Mamas on Bed Rest. So she just targets women that have a doctor telling them they have to stay in bed during their pregnancy. And she makes her whole living off this.
Yeah, and there's probably room for someone else to do that, or maybe several people to do that.
Yeah.
They may, like some people may connect awesome with her, but then there's other people that don't like her for whatever reason, and they may want to hear somebody else talk about this stuff.
Absolutely. She could have a whole direction she's going that's different to another need in the market.
Yeah.
And, so with this in mind, it makes this whole internet business thing unbelievable. Again, you can have an entire online empire sitting in a small room like I am in my house.
Yeah.
After all this time, my business partner and I have never recorded an episode together.
Right.
After we've been in business about 7 years, we do very little business together physically.
Yeah.
We spoke for the very first time together on stage 6 months ago. I mean, it's just amazing the ability of location mobility.
Yeah.
He's been in New York, Buenos Aires, Portland. He's been all over. I lived in San Diego. We went to, London. Wherever we want to be or nowhere. If we want to pick one place and we don't travel, we can do that too. You can the freedom of it is insane.
Yeah.
Well, and that's location freedom, time freedom. I mean, there's just a ton of freedom that comes with this kind of thing. Like, if you don't want to work in the morning, don't work in the morning.
Yeah.
There's no time clock. There's so many freedoms that come with internet business. I mean, again, like you said, I could talk for days on just that subject.
Yeah, or people just can go to internetbusinessmastery.com.
Yeah, that's a good place.
Find out more.
Find out more there, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's totally agree. And so going back to kind of the philosophical stuff, why is it important that we want to be free or even think about it? You did mention the ability to have more choices and things like that, but what about just kind of forgetting about all this stuff and just kind of punching the clock and doing what everyone else does? Why isn't that easier? That's like the path of least resistance, right?
Well, it certainly wasn't easier for me. I always had the desire. I didn't even know this stuff was possible, so I did that. But I don't know. This is where we get a little airy-fairy again, or whatever you want to call it. I remember somebody gave this quote of, you don't want to die with your music in you.
Right.
So this idea of, having the freedom to express who you are, I mean, that is what the core of all this is, to have choice.
Yeah.
And to have choice is to be who you are, really. All of the freedom stuff comes down to your ability to truly be who you are. And that is to be happy and get the most out of life.
Sure.
Clearly, if you're in a cage, at every level, it's harder to be who you are. Obviously, if I was in a jail cell, I wouldn't be able to do this interview, most likely.
That's right.
And express this way. And, if I don't have a computer, I can't write. If I don't have a piece of paper, I can't. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything is about the ability to express and experience life, really.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's why I think it's important.
Yeah.
I'm not here to be somebody else. And I was designed to be somebody else. That's why I say public indoctrination camps and all of the freedom movement stuff all of that comes down to, you're being told who to be instead of being able to figure that out on your own and then express it.
Yeah, totally.
So that's how I would boil it down, and that's why it's important. Like, oh, can you imagine, like, just dying with your music in you? That just kills me.
Yeah. I was just listening to Adam Carolla today, and he was talking about this exact thing, and how he's like, everyone, they're trying to sell you like supplements and all these like protein powders and all these things to make your life better, and he's like, just do something that gets you out of bed in the morning. That's all you need to do. You don't need all this stuff. It's like, yeah, that's exactly right, and that's how you can kind of maintain high enough happiness level to be motivated and to be excited to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, sleep is just a necessary evil now to me.
Exactly.
That's how I see it. Like, I wake up and my brain is like 100 miles a minute.
Yeah.
Just going, oh my gosh, what awesome thing do I get to do today?
Yeah, that's really cool.
But that comes from, like even what Adam was saying. It's basically finding that single motivating purpose and being willing to live it and pay the consequences for living it. There's going to be consequences. Like, there's friends that I had and don't have now.
Yeah.
Because just the act of the way I live scares them, or they don't like it, or whatever.
Sure.
And I had to just go, look, this is who I am. If you've got a problem, I understand. I'm not going to take it personal, though I should, but I'm not going to. Because it's the closest thing to personal as it could possibly be, but really I know it's about them if they've got an issue with it. So
totally. Yeah. So what do you think about, we've talked about this a lot, can you be free in an unfree world that's filled with regulations and taxes and bureaucrats and all the other, and we talked about the TSA and all that. Do you think that it's possible that we get to that, close to 100% freedom, or do we need to start engaging in some activism to break out of this?
Man, this is a tough question because, I know what I'm feeling right now about it and what needs are getting met out in the world.
Yeah.
So right now, again, because of the internet, or doing this show on the internet, we've still got access to an extremely high level of expression.
Yeah.
And for me, that seems to be the core. Now, if part of my expression included traveling all over the world to every country, every little place, then what's that?
Chris Gillibo.
Yeah, then my expression would be hindered in a completely different way.
Sure.
If I can't get in, or I don't have the correct paperwork or whatever ridiculous thing, then yes, that's going to hinder me to a different level. But unless my expression is put down to zero, like literally I cannot express myself, I'm in a jail cell, I've got a thing over my mouth, I can't inspire purpose-driven action in any way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get to express myself all the time.
Yeah.
And we still right now have an amazing way to express ourselves. So it's one of those things where, going down to some courtroom and, having a sign that says "End the Fed," whatever,
right.
Stop stealing, which seems crazy to say to the government. That's the whole point. Stop doing, that's like yelling at a dog for barking. You know what I mean? So there's this weird thing where I don't want to give them 1 ounce of anything of mine more than they're willing to steal with a gun.
Yeah.
Not a thought, not anything.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I guess if I got pleasure in, part of my Inspire Purpose-Driven Action was about helping others wake up to the fact that we're in cages, just big cages or whatever. Like, I would then do that, but it would be the same level of expression or ability to express as I have right now.
Yeah.
So, as far as, the normal, typical activism, I don't do that. My activism is teaching people to be autonomous as much as possible in a different way, to see that, because believe me, when you start going, oh, I can do what I want with my day, what else could I do that's free?
Yeah.
Ooh, I can say who I am in all my relationships and pay the consequences. Some people are going to leave. You're going to draw other people to you. Exactly. You're like, what else? Like, you just keep going. I mean, getting to the point where politically I was like, hey, I'm for freedom. I'm not for coercion.
Yeah.
I'm for the non-aggression principle, right? Like that came about with all the other freedoms and just taking it one step further.
Sure.
I've heard that atheism is, the freedom from every god, just one god more than most people.
Right.
And it's the same thing to me. Like, you get to the point where you're like, wow, I'm free. I do this, like freedom of location, time, what I say, the way my relationships are. What else? Well, in what ways am I not? Oh, hey, they keep asking me for these ridiculous papers.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of room in there. I definitely see it as a percentage. And I know we've talked about this before. Can we be 100%, completely 100% free? Not in the current state of things. And that's both literally and figuratively speaking. Right? Right? In the state of things and in the state, there is there's people that want to, scoop off our production.
Sure.
And then tell us how to live within that system. But it's not 100%.
Yeah.
So, there's a huge room, and there's a lot of different levels to freedom. Like, for me, maybe when I started, here's where I started. When I started on this journey, I was married in a marriage that was very little expression. Mm-hmm. In a job I really, really didn't enjoy anymore. Very much a cage. In a city, driving in the LA traffic.
Yeah.
I was 13 miles away from my job, and it took me over an hour to get there and an hour to get home. Right. 13 miles. It's insane.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there were so many aspects of my life that was, let's just give it a number out of 1 to 100. I was 12% free.
Yeah.
I could eat what I wanted. I could, have certain discussions I wanted.
Right.
There were some things that I was at 12%. And then I started looking at different ways and realizing that autonomy need was just completely not getting met.
Sure.
And started opening up different ways, started being more of who I am, which didn't work in my current relationship, so we're not together now. Yeah. Boom, that opened up 22%.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was able to start a business expressing myself in a certain way that made it so I didn't have to work that job and didn't have to live in that city, didn't have to do traffic. All of a sudden, boom, that's another 12%. Right. So, I try and look at it like that. And, I think my freedom level on a daily basis is pretty high.
Sure.
In this exact moment, I'm close to 100% in this moment. Now, if I leave the house and I get in a car and it's not licensed and all that other stuff, I'm willing to pay off the threat.
Yeah.
In the same way as if there was no government and somebody said, put a gun in my face and said, give me the money you have on you, I would go, okay, go away.
Right.
Or I'd do some cool karate move and get shot and then have to pay that. No, you know what I mean? You make those decisions of what level of freedom at any given moment. So my expression right now, all of this, I'm really high right now until I travel.
Sure.
So I try and look at it like that.
Yeah, so we can get, from what you're saying, it's like we can get various levels of freedom with all these things that are in our control, that are completely in our control.
Yes.
Whereas if we're fighting the kind of the overall overarching system or the Goliath or whatever out there, it's really tough to get. That's probably the last piece of the puzzle that you'd want to take on if you're looking to maximize the levels of freedom in your life.
Well, to be honest, I think that it's unnecessary to fight that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of go off on this weird thing. Like Stefan Molyneux from Free Domain Radio talks about, the key to freedom isn't, fighting the state. It's raising your kids without hitting them and teaching them basically what it's like to be fully autonomous and expressed individuals. Exactly. That's my fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that at some point, massive groups of people won't accept it because it's just not a part of how they are. My kids absolutely understand this freedom stuff.
Right.
And, to the point, I took them out of the public indoctrination camps and put them into private schools where, the kids help design what they're going to do. If they're going to learn science, they learn how to build swords in a foundry, and that teaches them 4 different types of science. Then they went to Spain and learned about the culture there, and they got to learn definitely about what kings are because they still had that kind of, that is part of my activism.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's very specific to me, like, oh, my kids, get to go to this school and I pay ridiculous for this school. But that's my activism. That's what I think will have a far more of an impact than, me going down, like I said, with the sign and going, stop stealing. If at some point people are raised to the point where they don't even understand the meme of control or coercion, Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there will be no need to fight.
Exactly.
And the last thing we want to do is fight the biggest and most technologically advanced violent empire. And I'm not even just speaking of America or any particular, but just the whole statism is at a all-time technological and violence high.
Yeah.
This is the way to do it, and I enjoy this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I've never thought, ooh, I can't wait to go down and stand in the sun and have people go, what the hell are these idiots talking about signs? Never had any interest in that.
Yeah.
But I enjoy being with my kids, and I enjoy having conversations like this. And then when their friends come over, we all have them. Or like I even had something that my 13-year-old daughter said to her teacher when we had a parent-teacher conference. He wanted to know more.
Yeah.
And I didn't force him to. There was no, do you know what I mean? Like, he just, intrinsic motivation, wanted to know more. Like, that to me is the fight.
That's cool. Yeah.
And it's a fun one.
Yeah, that's a really cool. I just had a follow up to that, and I forget what it was now, but yeah, I mean, it pays off because you're not only getting, kind of your personal fulfillment, but you're also able to influence other people without beating them over the head and hammering them on why we should believe this certain way. Which is
living by example. People want to know a lot of things when you get to the point where you can just live wherever you are, go wherever you want, when you want. Middle of the day, I'm having lunch with somebody I really enjoy spending time with, and instead of just having 1 hour and rushing back, I'm there for 3 hours, and then I work later in the night, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like, people are curious as to freedom. All of that is different aspects of freedom.
Sure.
So any way I can inspire that by my living, even without saying anything. Now, I like the saying stuff, as is probably quite clear, but also just actually being that. If somebody just looked at my life and went, okay, he's actually congruent with what he's saying about freedom.
Right. Exactly.
Both of those things together, I think, are quite magical.
Yeah, I agree. And then you throw in a few other things like protecting your assets and Bitcoin and things like that, which I'll probably get into.
And I do that stuff too.
Yeah.
For sure. Not to the, like, I can't wait for all your episodes about that so I can do it more.
Absolutely.
But, just like anything, if there's the robber in the alley, I might take a different route.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, he might be in that other alley too that I'm trying to, but, I definitely can't wait to hear episodes on that, because I've done a bit of asset protection, basically use the coercive system the way all the buddies of the coercive system use it.
Yeah.
Definitely done that to a certain degree. But yeah, learning more ways to keep the fruits of my labor, I'm very up for.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are kind of like the liberty crowd that is sort of like, we're not going all the way to where you're at, where they're expressing themselves fully, because they don't want to have to pay the bad guys. They don't want to have to pay taxes, and because that would be the worst thing ever. But I think there are ways to do both, where you can express yourself and get, at least significantly reduce what you're paying, if not altogether go down to zero. So there's a lot of stuff there, but.
Well, I would be mad too if I didn't get to express myself at all because I was worried about a different thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would be incredibly mad. I know. I went through that phase of despair and severe anger. Like, what? Like, I don't want my money that's stolen from me to go. But at the same time, I go, well, if a thief steals $50 from me and does something really atrocious with it, it's hard for me to see that I deserve moral condemnation for that. So I'm not dying with my music in me. And to me, that's the way to fight back in the most enjoyable way as well, and most useful. So
and we can have butterflies and forests and all that too.
Suddenly now they just live on me. Birds land on my shoulder and sing. And actually now I don't mind it. Instead of going, what the heck, get off me. Like, bring it on. Let's do this.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, that was cool. That was awesome. Really enjoyed our chat, and I'll be posting this soon. So, again, it's Jeremy Frandsen, internetbusinessmastery.com. Go check it out.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that, if you want to know more about the single motivating purpose or unique ability, there is a book out there right now. It's not ours yet, but you can go to internetbusinessmastery.com/unique ability. That'll take you right to it. There's a Kindle edition. For whatever reason, the book is really expensive, probably out of print, just like the Harry Brown book. It was like $40 or $50 or something because it was out of print. But you can get the Kindle version for, I don't know, it was like $10. And then anything, if you want to read more, I just have 3 things total. That was one. Another one, if you want to know more about the intrinsic motivation, internetbusinessmastery.com/motivation. Cool. And then more about single motivating purpose is internetbusinessmastery.com/185. And those are my 3 things. I don't know if you've got show notes. I imagine you do.
Yeah,
it's probably easier for people to just go back to your site and see the links. But
I'll put it up in freedom11.com, and I'll have it up in the podcast show notes. So
yeah, and hopefully this was useful, and I loved doing it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, and enjoy your day out there in Salt Lake.
Yep, thanks.